I will call this informational meeting to order. This is Tuesday, June 18th, 2013. Just a note here, there will not be, when my voice carries well, doesn't it? There will not be a land use committee meeting following this. There was nothing on the agenda, so we will not have a land use committee meeting today. So once we're done here, the next session, of course, will be the council meeting at 7 o'clock. We're going to start out with the staff report. Lori, please.
All right, thank you. Lori Hogstead, City Clerk. I had one item regarding a meeting next Tuesday, the 25th. We found out just now, Tamara just talked to the counties, and we do not have a Lincoln County or Minnehaha County meeting. At this time, we also have no electronic requests for the informational next Tuesday. So I just wanted to let you know, if you choose to cancel that, we can certainly put the mechanisms in work, but just wanted to let you know at this time we have no items.
Thank you.
So
we'll probably cancel. Is there
right.
consensus? What do you think, guys, gals? Okay.
We're very sad.
I think we're good.
okay, we're good. If anything comes up urgent in the meantime, we'll certainly be in touch, but all right, we'll go with that. All right, and then I just wanted to mention there's been a change in state law to do with raffles. You may have noticed on just about every council agenda, under the consent portion of our agenda, we have raffle requests. And as far as how many per year, I mean, I suppose we have maybe 5 to 10 a month, just depending on what's going on in the community. But the state law was changed in this past session, so that effective July 1, we no longer need to put those on a council meeting. We certainly still can continue to do that, but rather a designated administrative official could approve those requests for raffles. And if you chose to do that, we certainly could run those through our office and take care of them that way. We would still do our due diligence and make sure that they meet all the requirements per state law. The same thing we would do as if we were putting them on a meeting, and then send the person requesting the raffle a follow-up letter that yes, they can indeed hold their raffle. But unless you wish to continue to have them on the agenda, we can handle that just through our office. So.
Any questions for Lori? Yes, Michelle?
I guess I would just comment that when that passed last spring, I was cheering quietly that we don't need those on our agenda. I've never understood why they were there. I know it's an archaic whatever, but my opinion would be staff can handle it, and thank you very much.
Yes, well, we will do that. We will just take care of them on our end, and of course we'll work with the city attorney if we ever need to, do some checking on any state law item regarding the raffles. But that's how we'll handle it then.
Councilor Anderson? Councilor Staggers?
Yes, I agree that we probably shouldn't have that. But could you tell me what you're going to be doing then once that you're going to assume that responsibility? You just call up and talk to them? Or
no, we
what
would probably do exactly what we do now. They call and they ask about a raffle, and we tell them that we have a letter they need to submit with all the information, and it's a template, it's on our website, etc. We can email it to them, they send that to us, and then we would do exactly like we do now, except we would not put it on the agenda. We would look through, make sure everything is accurate and that they're able to do what they're asking to do, and they've given us 30 days notification. That's one of the most important parts of it. And if they do, then we will simply send them a letter in response, and we'll just reword it a little bit because it wouldn't have gone through a council meeting, but just tell them that, administratively their request has been approved. So really, we'll follow the same steps and use the same criteria.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and then one other item I wanted to mention, item 36 on the agenda tonight is the resolution to approve the Argus Leader as our official newspaper. The rate that the Argus Leader is going to charge is $5.84 per column inch, and that's an increase of 4 cents per column inch, so 53 cents a line. And they did give us a 10% discount due to the publications being camera ready. We have those done through multimedia, and we're able to send the publications in as well as our bills and payroll. There's a number of publications we send. They're generally in Fridays, for instance, notice to bidders and that type of thing. And now our minutes and ordinances and items from our council meetings due to the Tuesday meeting are now published on Saturdays. And then, of course, this next year we'll have election publications, which will be handled separately in our budget. But we will have the advertising director here tonight. His name is Kelly Redfern, and he met with Dave Bixler and myself a couple of times, and we just went over the layout of the bills and how they charge and that type of thing. Just kind of went through our affidavits and our invoice that we pay from, and he was able to satisfy Dave Bixler's questions as far as the rates and that type of thing. But there will be just a slight increase, but they're not anywhere near the maximum that they're allowed to charge per state law.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Councilor Anderson?
Lori, can you explain why there's no other publication that can qualify for the city's business on this?
I sure can. That's a great question. There's the state law, it's Chapter 2, 17-2. Title 17-2 talks about the legal requirements for publication and to become a legal newspaper. And there's a number of items. In order to be a legal newspaper, the newspaper, first of all, has to have a paid circulation, and they have to have this in place at least a year prior to any publication of our notices. Let's say that we had someone interested, they would have to start that immediately so that we had that year prior. And they have to have not less than 50% of the published price and also be paid for by not less than 50% of those who have the paper distributed. There is also a legal newspaper must report actual news happenings, recent occurrences such as political, social, moral, and religious subjects and miscellaneous reading matter for at least 1 year prior to the publication. And no more than 80% of the space devoted to news content may duplicate any other publication. And then there's also the section that talks about the size of the page, that it has to be a certain size, so many square inches. And I know there is another publication that goes out once a week that's a free paper, and they do not meet that size requirement. So there are many different state laws that govern the legal publication.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson?
Lori, if you said it, I'm sorry if I'm asking it again, but the idea that the City of Sioux Falls is treated like an advertiser, like any advertiser, right? And in the contracts that I've had with the Argus, you buy a block of space under a certain rate for that space, and year after year, if your contract or allocation, you want more, you negotiate a new rate. I know that we're in a little bit of a spot knowing that we don't have any other options, but it would be fair to understand what those rates were in the past, how many inches we've bought in the past, and what we're likely to purchase in the future, and what that rate per inch would be.
I can tell you that we've spent, on average over the last 3 years, about $61,000 in publication. And we don't specifically have a set amount that we use. We send the publications in, and they publish what we need to publish, whether it be minutes and 2 ordinances or, a lengthy ordinance and a map. But some of those items that are very lengthy, such as, shaped places, for instance, if we publish that, it would cost us a small fortune. But instead, we can publish a notice of fact of adoption, which is a 1-page form. So anywhere that we're able to, we try to cut those costs and do that type of thing. I know even back when I was working with the alcoholic beverage licensing, every single license had a separate notice, and each of the notices had a standard paragraph at the beginning, information on the license holder, and then a standard paragraph at the end. And I ended up being able to combine those all into one notice, and that saved quite a bit of money. And then the fact that we had them camera ready certainly helps. But our rates for this past year went up, like I said, 4 cents. I think I have it in here somewhere from that Dave did some checking on it. Dave, would you mind just coming up and going over this? Since he put this form together, I will let him explain.
Well, I'm not sure that there's much to gain as far as we don't really have any negotiating leverage. We can't switch our publications to television or something. So But really what I'm after is what the Argus leaders' approach is to helping the city of Sioux Falls versus a regular down the street customer.
I don't know that I can answer that for you, but maybe the gentleman that's here tonight, Kelly Redfern, could respond to that.
Could you give Kelly just a heads up that that's...
Sure, I can
Just one
try to get a
question.
hold of him before the end of
If
the
you can.
day.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm able to.
Thanks.
Good.
Say, Lori, were you done then, or I have one more request of
No,
you?
I am done.
Okay, one request. Could you just give a brief update about where we're at with the contract with the school system as far
sure.
as voting places, the meeting that we just recently had?
Sure, we had a meeting yesterday, Jim Enton and myself, Dave Fifley, Todd Veek from the school district, as well as their attorney, Sue Simons, and then Bob Litz, also from Minnehaha County. And Todd wanted to take another, or just sit down and talk about that agreement and where we were at with that, because we'd had that on a few different meetings, and then we ended up finally deferring it to September 17th, which it will come back before you. And so I went back and listened to, there were actually 2 informational meetings where we discussed that topic, and went back and listened to that. And that started back in, I want to say November of last year, and we had so many unanswered questions, and that was one of the reasons that we deferred that agreement. One of those was, is the school even going to have an election this spring? They didn't know at that time, we didn't know. Were we going to have our own special election this spring? Or were we going to combine with the school? We still hadn't received any petitions in, but we knew they were coming for the snow gates. That was still up in the air. We didn't really know, although I think we had decided at that point that we would use vote centers versus the precincts, but I don't think everyone was 100% with that. And then the other item is what type of e-poll books would we be using? The e-poll books that were used in our last election worked, but not as well as they should have worked, and so we were looking at a new system. So many of those questions have been answered. Obviously, the school had their school board election. We did not have a special election or combine. We're going to use the Hart Intercivic e-poll books, and we are going to use vote centers. But the one thing that we want to do, that's just the one item left really with that agreement, is to determine which vote centers we will use. Now, the school district used 13 at their May election. I went around to all 13. Dave Bixler came with me to the majority just to take a look at how they were laid out, set up, took notes, etc. But we are going to have Peter Blanc come in late August. And you might remember Peter from some of the ADA presentations he has given to the council, that he's internationally known for his ADA compliance work. And he will be coming to Sioux Falls. We're going to get a group together, including Dave and Colleen Moran from the city attorney's office, myself, Bob Litz will invite the school district along, whoever wishes to attend, and we will go with Peter Blanc as well as his associate to look at all of these locations that were used for this last election, because we do want to come up with a standardized set of vote centers that all entities will use, whether it's school, city, county. County, though, obviously will have to expand on those, but they would still use the same, what I call core set of vote centers. And the school, of course, will be satisfied with that group, because their elections typically aren't as large when they hold them in the odd-numbered years, which they hold them alone. They don't join with anybody during that time. And so we just talked that through and talked about the ADA review, how important that is, and how nice it will be to have that group say to us, every one of your locations is ADA compliant as far as the physical location, the services that you can provide from that location. So that's our plan late this summer, to do the tour, finalize that list, attach it as an addendum to the agreement, and then at that time we'll be ready to go with that and get everything set up for our April 2014.
So we are very comfortable that all the answers and questions we had earlier have been answered. The bottom line is we want to make sure everything is ADA compliant as far as the vote centers go. This is the only time that these folks can be in here is the end of August. So we're right on track, and the agreement should be presented then in September, right on schedule. Thank you, Lori.
Yep, thank you.
Councilor Anderson, would you please give us an update on the Public Services Committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. On Tuesday, June 11th, 2013, Public Services Committee did a review of the tobacco policy. The presentation was given by Don Kearney and Joe Franken and staff. What they did is did an overview of the new tobacco policy, how it will affect operations in our city parks. Basically, this has all been geared towards youth events. The police department has not, up to this time, issued any tickets for this. What they have is a courtesy ticket and a little packet that you can put your cigarette in to put it out. And they've actually had a number of calls on this, and nobody has argued the point. So far it is working as it was written.
Great, thank you.
And that was the only item we had.
Councilor Staggers?
I guess one of my primary concerns is this is tobacco policy, and apparently we are actually have the possibility of enforcement by the police giving a ticket. I don't see how the Parks Department can just do this on their own without the City Council approving of it.
I guess I can reply to that. We did give the Parks Department authority, I believe, 2 years ago to amend the smoking policy. So they're doing that out of direction from the council, I do believe, because I don't remember the exact date in that, but it was definitely something they presented to the council first, and I do remember we did have some type of vote on that.
Okay, I guess at that time I wasn't on the council. But this idea of ticketing, it was, because the last time I heard a presentation on this, the idea is that this is something we don't want people to do, but we don't really have any enforcement. But now it sounds like we definitely do have enforcement, that we can have the police give people tickets for smoking in the park.
Well, and once again, as I stated, there have been no tickets issued. I think a ticket would be issued if somebody totally refused after being made aware of the ordinance and they refused to quit smoking in a youth area, then a ticket could be issued, yes.
It is an educational process right now from their standpoint. Here's one of the envelopes, and they hand these out they ask people, they explain why. It's strictly on a youth event. It has nothing to do with adult events, for example, adult softball games or those kinds of things in the city parks. And the Parks Department and the Sioux Falls Police Department are doing a very good job just informing people initially right now, and that's what they plan on doing for who knows how long, but they're not issuing any citations at all on this at this time. They're just informing them, and everybody's been complying. Councilor Staggers, there have not been any issues whatsoever.
And if I may continue also,
please.
This did come out of an issue where we had some drinking at a youth national event here in Sioux Falls. And the groups themselves came to the city and asked for options of being able to regulate drinking and smoking when they have an event here in our city. And those were youth. Once again, there were youth groups that came to us. So I think this was a response from that also, but it is also the safety issue, secondhand smoke, and once again, we targeted the youth events. This is not being utilized in any adult events within the city.
I think what I might do, Councilor Anderson, if it's okay with you, I'll put this on the agenda for later this fall, so we can have a recap of how the summer went for us along this line, and have the Parks Department come in and give us a report.
I think that'd be a great thing.
Great. Okay.
I agree.
Councilor Chair?
Yes, Councilor.
One thing that came out of that, and I don't know if this is the direction Councilor Staggers is going with this, but kind of caught me by surprise, and I couldn't respond to it at the meeting, but I asked, is it policy or is it ordinance? And if it's park policy and it's a sign that's posted by the city parks director, it bears the weight of ordinance. And that's what the ticket would be for, is failure to follow the direction of a sign posted by the city parks director. It just seemed kind of strange to me, and it took me a while to really wrap my mind around that, and I find it interesting that our ordinances can work that way, I guess.
So if I can just ask Dean, so what you learned is that the parks director can just simply come up with some sign and that has the force of ordinance?
That's the way I understood it.
It doesn't sound good.
Councilor Erpenbach, please.
Well, if I might, and I did spend some time on the Parks Board, and part of the way that our ordinances are set up, all our ordinances have been passed through a city council that has sat here or in another room at City Hall in previous years. That is an ordinance that the Parks Department, the head of the Parks Department has that authority to do those sorts of things. If we want to change that ordinance, if we want to take back that control and start to micromanage the parks, we certainly can. There's nobody stopping us from doing that. But a council a long time ago said, you know what? We got enough to do without micromanaging the parks.
This might be part, like we said, of a bigger discussion later on. But.
Exactly. I think what we'll do, we will schedule this for a report from the Parks Department at the end of the summer. And if there are any questions then, I think we can put forward some of those questions, get some more answers. Okay? Great. Are there any other open discussion items before the council at this time? There being none, we will move on to presentations, and we're going to start out with the monthly financial report with Tracy Turbeck. Please, Tracy.
Good afternoon. Tracy Turbeck with the City Finance Office. Back with my monthly financial update as of May 31st, 2013. And as always, we'll go through some of the economic indicators. First up is the local unemployment rate here in the Sioux Falls MSA. And as you can see on the chart, the green line is the 2013 unemployment rate. It continues to improve. We were at 4.1% last month when I reported to you, and since last month that has fallen to 3.5%. You may have seen that in some of the recent news stories. Kind of along with that, I will mention that from a year ago, over 3,200 additional people are working here in the Sioux Falls MSA. So unemployment is down, and the number of people working are up fairly significantly. Also continuing to move ahead in a very strong way are the building permits being issued by the Building Services Department. From January through May of 2013, we've issued a little over $307 million in building permitting activity, and as you can see on the chart, the year-to-date number for May is the green line and extends out considerably further than either the blue or the red line from 11 or 12. That's actually running more than 120% ahead of where we were through May of last year. And it's really a very broad-based rate of growth. It's not one particular area that we're seeing that growth in. Single-family building permits are up significantly. Multifamily units are just going through the roof. As well as non-residential types of permits are also up very, very strongly. I think the one area where we are seeing it's not down, but it is basically flat, and that is in residential remodeling, which I know we saw that surge during the economic slowdown. More people were remodeling, and that is kind of flattened out now with the increase in new homes being constructed. Our general sales tax dollars, this is the rolling 12-month growth rate, and we ended the 12 months ended at the end of May with a 5.6% growth rate, which is exactly where we were a year ago at the end of May 2012. So we're continuing to see that grow in a very solid way and a very stable growth rate. Last month we were at 5.3%, so that did increase modestly from last month. But again, we're hanging right around that 5% growth rate, which is certainly a very positive indicator for our local economy. Entertainment tax collections are also running at about 5%. Last month it was 5.2% on a rolling 12-month basis. We're at 5.1% now, so those are back down pretty much in line with our general sales tax dollars, but continue to grow in a positive fashion, although not at the rate they were a year ago. They were growing at 6.5% a year ago, and I think that maybe reflects kind of where we were in 2011. The latter half of 2010 and the first half of 2011 was pretty sluggish in the area of entertainment tax revenue, so that made last year look very, very strong. Looking at general fund revenues and expenditures, in both cases, I think we're very much on track. In the case of revenues, we're at 39% of budget. Last year, we were at 38% of budget, so we're really right on the mark. Year-to-date, general fund revenues through the end of May are $50.9 million. That was, as the chart indicates, from April to May, we see a pretty good uptick with that first half property tax payments that come in May. On the expenditure side, we are running ahead of last year. It's certainly not in line with budget relative to our Operation Timber Strike that we talked about last week, and we'll be talking about again here in a little while, and then again later tonight. Year-to-date expenditures in the general fund are at $53.9 million. That's 41% of budget. Last year at this time it was 37%, so that's certainly reflective of Operation Timber Strike. And then we also had this year with the calendar, we had 3 payrolls in May. Last year we had 3 in June, so that tends to skew that number just a little bit. The street budget through May was at 68% of budget, so that again is reflective of the Operation Timber Strike expenditures, which largely have been charged to the street department budget. Therefore, the need for the supplement that we'll talk about tonight. So with that, I would certainly entertain whatever questions you folks have.
Councilor Karski, please.
Tracy, I was doing some math, and my concern is primarily on the revenue side. On don't know what page this is exactly in the more detailed report, but under the general fund summary, we project revenues to be $129,182,831. It's about the fourth page of the report, I guess.
Fourth page.
It says on top, we're 42% of the year lapsed.
Okay, we're looking at the general fund now, I assume?
Okay, yeah, and our revenues currently are at $50,872,000 and change. But if 42% of our year is lapsed, our revenue should be at $54,200,000. Are we $3.5 million short on revenues from where we projected?
No, and that's one thing with the city revenues. They don't necessarily come in 12 equal installments.
Okay.
As I mentioned, property taxes, we've got just the first half collected in May, so that we should be pretty close to what you can see on property taxes. We're at 38% of budget. The rest of that will come in over the next 7 months of the year, June through December, and that's true with a number of our revenues. That's why I think it's important to look at those percentages in previous years. In 2012, you can see we were at this time, at the end of May 2012, we're at 38% of budget. By the end of the year, we had slightly exceeded our budget number. So to me, that indicates we're on track with where we were a year ago, and even in 2011, it was 38% of budget. So I think we're very much on track with where we would expect to be at this point in the year.
And that's what I was questioning, is do we have any concern here, so I can see what you're saying. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions for Director Turback?
There being none, thank you, Tracy. And of course, the exciting topic of the afternoon is Operation Timber Strike, and an update that we're going to get on that. And Mark Cotter, I guess, is going to start this off. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Council Chair. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. We'll take a team approach today to communicate to you what the FEMA Public Assistance Program is, and then we'll also provide you an update on Operation Timber Strike, and we're also here to answer your questions. Today we have Director Tracy Turback, Dean Borkart, and Regan Smith. Regan Smith is the emergency manager for the City of Sioux Falls, and he's going to take you through the first part, which is the presentation. Regan?
Thank you, Mark. Regan Smith, Emergency Management for the City of Sioux Falls. I will just briefly go through the FEMA, or Federal Emergency Management Agency, Public Assistance Grant Program, and basically what the scope of that is and where we are at with that process. Just to give everybody a review, going back on May 1st and 2nd of this year, the city participated in a preliminary damage assessment along with municipalities, counties, rural electric cooperatives, and other eligible applicants in 7 counties throughout the state of South Dakota that were affected by the April 9th storm. Governor Dugard requested and then received a presidential declaration on May 10th. On May 22nd, there was an applicant briefing held. The city did make requests for federal public assistance at that time. On May 31st, there was a kickoff meeting between FEMA and city staff, FEMA inspectors and city staff. Currently, city finance, public works, parks, and emergency management are working with FEMA staff to formulate the projects. This entails gathering all the and providing all the contracts, the invoices, the employee timesheets, our equipment logs, cost estimates, and other documentation that is required by FEMA, as well as visiting the debris drop-off sites and other damaged facilities. As you'll see in the process where we're at, we're formulating those projects. That will go on to project review by FEMA that is here in South Dakota, and then it'll work its way up to Denver, and then some of the larger projects to Washington before it is approved, and then the funding comes back to the state of South Dakota, and then on to the city of Sioux Falls. Just a little review of the program. The purpose of public assistance is to provide assistance to state and local governments and certain types of private nonprofits so communities can quickly respond to and recover from major disasters or emergencies declared by the President. The funding is broken up in 75% federal share, 10% state of South Dakota, and then local share or city of Sioux Falls 15%. Eligible applicants under the public assistance program are Native American tribal governments, states, counties, city and township and other subdivisions of states, and certain private nonprofits. The grantee is the state, and they're responsible for administering the grants. The sub-grantee is eligible applicant that receives the public assistance grant as reimbursement for eligible disaster work. The city is going to be a sub-grantee under this program. To be eligible, the work must be obviously disaster related, located in the designated disaster area, and in this case it's declared counties, and we were fortunate that both Minnehaha and Lincoln counties were declared. Being the applicant's responsibility, we obviously have to be responsible for the areas that the work was done, and then not funded under another federal agency or another federal program. The costs must be reasonable and necessary to get the work done. They must comply with any federal or state or local laws or regulations, and then they must include deductions for any insurance we receive, salvage, or purchase discounts. FEMA breaks the work up into 7 categories. Category A is debris removal. Category B is emergency protective measures. C is roads and bridges. D is water control. E is public buildings. F is public utilities. And then G is parks. The City of Sioux Falls has work in categories A, B, F, and G under this declaration, and I'll go through those costs at this time. Category A, debris removal, that is eligible when it eliminates an immediate threat to life safety and health. It eliminates an immediate threat to the significant damage to improved property, and it ensures economic recovery of the community and provides a benefit to the community at large. This obviously was a majority of the work that was done in Operation Timber Strike. The debris removal work is ongoing. That work has been completed by city staff, hourly contractors for that first week after the storm, national debris removal and national arborist contractors, and then we did have assistance from the state Department of Corrections, Department of Transportation, South Dakota Wildland Firefighters, and then Minnehaha County Highway. The contracted pickup of tree branches from the right-of-way and the city parks system is complete at this time. The arborist tree branch removal and pickup from the right-of-way is expected to be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Public Works and Parks crews are continuing to pick up branches along the Big Sioux River, the Skunk Creek, and then in drainage ways, and we hope that's going to get done this summer. The grinding operations, grinding at the public and commercial sites at the fairgrounds are complete. The hauling and restoration is underway, and that will be done well in anticipation of the Sioux Empire Fair. Grinding at 69th and Cliff is nearly complete, and that restoration will follow. And then finally, grinding and hauling at the chamber site or the street department site will be completed or must be completed by October 1st per the grant, and we anticipate that's going to happen again much sooner than that date. Category B, emergency protective measures. These are actions that are taken by the community before, during, and following a disaster to save lives, protect public health, protect safety and imminent threat of significant damage to public and private property through cost-effective measures. We did have police and fire overtime costs during that three-day ice storm. The call volume during the storm was 3 times the normal amount, but our first responders and Metro Communications provided good service to everybody in the community. We also had under Category B some temporary repairs and restoration to the city light and power lines. Category G, C through G, this is permanent work, and this work must repair, restore, or replace disaster damaged facilities in accordance to the federal guidance and regulations. It must restore to pre-disaster design, capacity, and function. It must be a result of the disaster. And we did have a little bit of that. We did have Category F, which is public utilities. There is some permanent work or permanent damage to the Sioux Falls light and power system. And then also Category G in the park system. We did have significant damage to backstops at Harmondon Park, some fencing at Frank Olson, and then some golf safety nets at Keene and Elmwood Parks. As far as project deadlines, the emergency work must be done within 6 months of the declaration date, so we have until November 10th to get that work done. There is a possibility for a 6-month extension, but again, I don't believe that's going to be necessary. The grinding is well underway, and we should have that done. Permanent work, we have an 18-month time period to get that done, and again, I think that permanent work in the parks and the light system will meet that deadline. As a review, the Public Assistance Program assists in the restoration of community infrastructure. It's a supplemental cost reimbursement program that has specific eligibility requirements. It's not a discretionary block grant that the city can, once we get a check, decide how it's expended. The FEMA share of the eligible cost will be awarded to the grantee, who's the state of South Dakota, and then dispersed to the applicants or the sub-grantee, which will be the city of Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls has participated in the public assistance program 7 times in the last 20 years, including this event. So we're pretty experienced with the program and its regulations. With that, I don't know if Mark has anything or anybody has any questions on my portion.
Are there any questions for Reagan? I think we'll take questions for Reagan right now. Kermit, please.
Just to clarify, Reagan, the decision to declare this a disaster was that made on May 10th?
That was, the presidential declaration was on May 10th. That was made by
May
President
10th.
Obama, yes.
And when did we went to the state to say that we felt we had a disaster?
The Minnehaha and Lincoln County went to the state of South Dakota.
Okay, so the city itself didn't directly go to the state. We're just kind of piggybacking on.
Right.
Okay.
We declared an emergency for bid purposes and that type of thing, and you know, so it's actually on the counties to make that request. And again, there were 7 counties that participated in that.
When did they do that? Go to the state?
I want to believe that was, if I look at a calendar, it was the Tuesday following, so it was May 9th, so that would have been a Tuesday. So the following Tuesday, both the county commissions for Lincoln and Minnehaha County made those declarations 7 days following, so that would have been the 16th. 16th of April, excuse me.
If I could just ask, when did we get this firm to help us out on meeting the requirements for getting money from FEMA? And what was the name of the firm, and how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did we spend?
The firm is called SAIC, and they're a monitoring firm. They monitor the work that's being done by the contractors that are doing the debris pickup, and then the arborist work that is in the right-of-way.
And they helped us. My understanding was they were to help us with filling out the forms for FEMA and going through the correct process. Is that right? Or
No.
is that some other company?
City staff does a majority of that work. What the monitoring firms do is they monitor the work that is being done by the contractors that are actually out there picking up the debris, and the monitors that are taking down those hazardous limbs and hazardous trees. They monitor that work to ensure that it's being done correctly and it meets the federal regulations.
And once again, how much are we paying them?
Ah, boy. Do you know that figure, Mark? I didn't hear that. The figure that we're paying SAIC?
Yes. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. About the current estimate to complete the work, and there's still work to be completed because we do expect that the grinding is going to go on for several weeks into the future, but the current estimate for the SEIC is about $1.1 million.
$1.1 million. Mm-hmm. Will we get compensation from FEMA for that?
We do. That's a qualifying expense.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Jameson, please.
Regan, for the debris pickup, you've trained for this. You've gone through this scenario before in the past. There's a playbook you kind of follow, so to speak, if a debris pickup is the emergency. Does that playbook call for the 3 or 4 passes through the city, or is that something that?
No, I mean, that's a policy decision that is made by the unified command of the city, which is the police chief, fire chief, public works director. And depending on the situation in this scenario and how much debris there is out there, it's determined, we do have a debris management plan within the city's emergency operations plan, but it doesn't specifically tell you how many passes you need to take.
What was the rationale behind the 3 or 4 passes, whatever was done? What was the?
Well, the first pass obviously was primarily to deal with what was out in the roads and what was there. But we knew going into this it was going to take a while for us to assess all the damage, the scope of it, and then for the residents to assist us in getting that debris to the right-of-way. And then just as our assessment was out there, just to see how much was out there and then determine what was reasonable as far as eliminating the hazards and eliminating the debris throughout the community. Right. And then we were being also consulted by those national contractors, the ones that were monitoring, picking up. They've done this in literally hundreds of communities throughout the country, so they share that experience with us also.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions for Reagan? I'll turn it back over to Mark then. Mark, please.
Great. I think we just want to say thank you for letting us provide you an opportunity to ask questions and give you the update. Regan covered all the majority of the items. We do still have arborist work that is doing punch list work throughout the city. The current punch list work is around 1,100 trees, and so they're either addressing hazardous hangers or trees that need to be removed based on the criteria that's set forth and the amount of damage that comes to a tree. Once we get all that work done, we are going to go out and do a citywide stump grinding contract for those stumps that are in the right-of-way to make sure that we finish the job. And so other than that, it's going really well. Both sites near the fairgrounds are completely ground, and we've got teams over there restoring those sites. The landfill team actually mobilized their grinder into 69th and Cliff to grind that up so we can demobilize that site as soon as we possibly can. And then the big site is Chambers, and we'll start to mobilize equipment there by the end of the week. But it's gone very well. I think that the entire unified command system that really Regan trains us up on and gets us ready to flip the switch at any given time. You come into a room when there's a disaster, whether it's a tornado or a debris issue like this, you set up a planning team. They immediately identify the first 3 to 5 things that need to be addressed. Logistics procures the equipment, operations carries it out, and you really just get to leverage a lot of different minds and experiences. And in this one, we're fortunate to have a debris expert from FEMA fly in immediately and really advise us not only on the process but on the contracts that we use. Those contracts are on the city website under Operation Timber Strike, and I would encourage anyone to go to them and see them. And ultimately, very soon, we'll be closing out this project.
More questions. Councilor Staggers, please.
Yes, Mark, the administration made the decision for us to go and try to get FEMA money. Is there any provision for the city council to actually become involved in that decision making instead of just the administration?
I would probably defer to City Attorney Dave Fifley.
Dave, please.
Councilor Staggers, under federal law and also state law, it's the executive, the chief executive officer that makes those decisions in terms of applying for and accepting the money. As the legislative body, the council does have appropriation authority. Once the money is received, you have the power of the purse, and then at that point, you appropriate as you see fit.
I guess maybe if I could just ask a follow-up question there. We appropriate the money when we get it. So theoretically, the money we get from FEMA, the city council could appropriate it for another area of the country that suffered a true disaster? Is that true?
You have the power of the purse, Councilor, correct?
Okay. Because there, if I can just say a few
One more
words.
question, please.
Yeah. There's a concern of some people that, you know, what happened on April 9th and following was terrible for Sioux Falls. But it most certainly wasn't a disaster as people usually think of disasters, because this boiled down to just simply, well, I shouldn't say simply, but mostly collecting tree branches. And so I guess there is a concern within the community that we shouldn't be taking this FEMA money because there are other needs throughout the country when it comes to disasters that are much more greater than this. And so I guess some people are concerned that, well, once again, we should not take this money.
Thank you. I might make a comment on this. I was very fortunate, or I was very concerned myself when this happened. And along with myself, and I know several other counselors from time to time stopped in down at the EOC, how quick the EOC was established, and how you folks, Reagan and the team, how you went out after it right away. As a result, I believe of the action of our city employees and those that were involved in the EOC, we actually saved the city significant dollars. And, in my opinion, from what I saw with some of the hazards we had with shutdown of powers, the response of the firefighters, and the response of our police, we actually probably saved lives because of our quick response to this situation. This is something at the time that was very significant for Sioux Falls, and while I agree, my heart goes out to all people who suffer when it comes to emergencies like this throughout the country. But we are taking care of our folks here in Sioux Falls, and because of the quick response that we had, I believe that we actually saved our folks some money, and I think that the appropriations, I think, are very well documented, and I think it's the right thing to do is to bring the money back into the city. I know we took action on a supplemental appropriation request to offset those expenses the last time, and I know maybe we could have Tracy come up and speak a little bit to the appropriation, and the intent is to replace those funds as we go forward. Correct, Tracy?
That's correct. The excuse me, the supplemental appropriation ordinance that was put on first reading last week and that will be on second reading and ready for your vote tonight is intended to reimburse the budgets that took the brunt of the cost of the Operation Timber Strike. So those dollars that, particularly in the street department, that were originally budgeted to be spent on street maintenance and upkeep and repairs were not used for that. They were used to respond to Operation Timber Strike, and so now this supplemental appropriation ordinance will in effect make those departments whole so that for the rest of 2013 they can carry out their plan of work to maintain the streets, to fill the potholes and fix the cracks, and when the snow comes this fall to move snow and all the things that we expect of them.
And then once we, if I might question, then once we receive the reimbursement from FEMA, it's the administration's, they are going to then reimburse our reserve funds for those dollars that we appropriated, correct?
That would be correct. The most of the money, and as it's indicated in the supplement, all $8 million that the supplement relates to were general fund expenditures. So whatever portion of that we recover from FEMA will go into the general fund. As I mentioned, there's some other funds. Regan mentioned the Light and Power Fund had some expenses. So those accounts that incurred the expenses that FEMA is reimbursing will receive that reimbursement then when it comes in. In the case of the general fund, it will, in effect, replenish our reserves to an extent.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Jameson, please.
A couple of questions. Tracy, if and thanks for coming up. I was hoping you were going to be a part of this.
That's why I'm here.
I've had quite a conversation about this topic. So one question is, if the funds were never received or qualified for FEMA relief, would there be any loss of services at the current level that we have for the city? Would there be any loss of this level of service to the city?
Well, I think that's certainly a potential consequence of that we may encounter if those funds are not received. It doesn't wipe all of our reserves out. It would take somewhere around a quarter of our reserves. So who knows what's around the corner? I mean, it certainly would leave the city in a more vulnerable position to deal with a disaster that we might have next week that we don't know about. It would certainly leave us more vulnerable to an economic downturn that may come next month or next year. So it certainly can have an impact, and in and of itself, it's difficult to say with any confidence today what that might be, but that's, you know, we carry reserves for a number of reasons, and dealing with disasters is only one of them.
Right. Well, the issue really is, the question there is really about whether or not we would be paying essentially our sales tax collected within the city, and then because we returned this money potentially to the federal government, that we'd actually incur more debt, or I'm sorry, more taxes would have to be collected in order to make ourselves whole. And I don't see that that's going to happen. Certainly we'd lose some skin in it, but we wouldn't get cut to the bone, so to speak. Okay, one other question is, certainly the 2014 budget is getting produced and developed. Do you or the mayor have plans to use reserve funds in the 2014 budget?
Well, as you say, the 14 budget is a work in progress, and we're still a month and a half away before it's presented to the council. But I can say that recent years we have, for budget purposes, anticipated using a certain amount of fund balance to balance the budget, and we have done that, and you folks have adopted budgets on that premise. The long term, the goal is to maintain reserves at that 25% level, and that would be the intention, to present a budget that keeps, is mindful of that policy. So I would expect the budget would reflect some use of fund balance for 2014. At this point, how much of that, how big that number might be, I guess I'm not really prepared to say.
I would just wrap up with that follow-up, if I could, just to wrap up, is the idea that I think checking out and getting a chance to look at the 2014 budget will give us a better understanding of what the impact is going to be on our budget and where our reserve levels would be set. If the administration has plans to hire more people for good reasons, and the council supports those reasons, it's probably a good time to consider just how important those funds are and the true effect on our budget if we don't accept the funds. So I'm just, as I understand it, when the funds come in, as the city attorney had said, the council will appropriate those funds, and at that time we would be certainly under a better understanding of the impact to our budget, and could make a better informed decision at that time.
Councilor Anderson, please.
Tracy, we discussed it a little bit last week too. When are we going to get the final number that will be turned into FEMA?
Well, there are submittals ongoing. I believe a couple have already been made to FEMA for particular areas of cost. I think the light and power one that Regan mentioned has been submitted. Some of the overtime costs for police and fire have been submitted. So that will be an ongoing process for some time. If it takes until October before the grinding is finished, which we don't expect it to take that long, but that's the contractor's deadline, in essence, to finish that project. If it takes that long, it will be after they finish before the final costs would be submitted to FEMA. I think it's possible that we would have everything submitted to FEMA, and depending on how quickly they process it and make a decision, that could all occur in 2013. I certainly wouldn't guarantee that. I think some of that very likely could carry over into next year before final approvals are made and checks are cut back to the city. I mean, that's my expectation, but it's just it's my best guess, really.
Great. Are there any other questions? Councilor Staggers, please.
Yes, just one quick question for Regan. The 69th and Cliff operation, how much are we paying the owner of that land to use it?
We lease that land for $5,000 for a 6-month period of time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the team, and again to recognize what a great job our city crews did and all those that were involved with this operation. Is there any other business here before the council? There being none, I will adjourn this meeting.